based on a BPO or whatever, and I get frustrated as a real estate broker thinking that who's in charge of this sale?
Yeah.
My buyer didn't sign anything that said that the bank needs to clear X number of dollars.
Right, right.
But the lender is muscling the whole deal. And yes, we can walk away from it, but my buyer wants the property.
Yeah, it's a tough road to hoe, and a lot of, in fact, just recently I had a builder that just couldn't let go of the fact that he was no longer in control. That it was really the bank that he owed money to that was driving the deal. Now, yes, he was the owner and he would sign the purchase and sale agreement, but the bank ultimately has veto power. You know, in the purchase and sale agreements that I see regarding short sales, they typically have the FMLS special stip in them that acknowledge, you know, by all the parties that there needs to be a reduction in the payoff in order to cover the expenses, and that, and number two, there's a release of personal liability. And so, you know, there's a second mortgage in the property. You pretty much want to get that taken out right away if you're representing the buyer. I mean, we'll talk about more of the technical stuff, but he's right. The seller isn't truly the seller. I mean, yes, they have title, and yes, they are, you know, signing the contract, and yes, they're negotiating. But at the end of the day, the bank is footing the bill. They're the ones that are having to take the reduction in the payoff in order to free up money to pay the expenses that are involved. And these things can get very confusing in a hurry, especially in new construction where the liens just kind of pile up. You know, I had one which was new construction. I always tell this story and it tickles me so much, where the buyer had put non-refundable construction deposit with the builder, $200,000, and the builder got about 3/4 of the way through the house and, you know, went through a divorce, was on the verge of filing bankruptcy, was about to be foreclosed on. So the buyer steps in to save his $200,000 and get his house, and he becomes the contractors. He's hiring subcontractors. Well, as you can imagine, the first contractor, he wasn't paying a sub, so there was a bunch of materialmen's and mechanics liens on the property that we had to get payoffs on, put them on the closing statement, and they kept changing all the time. New liens kept popping up. And then, you know, secondly, the second contractor, who was the buyer, he got in a fight with his subcontractors, and now there's a second layer of liens that we had to fight through. Then the divorce attorney files, you know, an attorney's lien, and it just went on and on. And every time we did a title check down, we found more liens, which means we had to get a payoff from that lien holder. We had to go back to the first mortgage lender, back to the second mortgage lender, and everybody was sitting at a table. It's almost like a group this size and asking, okay, well, who's going to pay the bill? You know? And everybody's like, man, I don't want it. You know, the first mortgage lender, you know, they're the 800-pound gorilla because they can foreclose and they can take the property. Second mortgage lender's in a very vulnerable position, so they're going to have to take a bigger hit. HOA, you know, lien holders, they had to, you know, take the hit, and some, you know, lien holders simply won't budge. The attorney wouldn't budge on their lien, which became problematic. And in a deal recently, we had an HOA management company through their law firm that would not, you know, reduce their payoff by one dime, and they said, we just don't want to get in the business of doing that. We'd rather take zero, because we've run, you know, the numbers, and if we can get as much as we can stay in business. We can, you know, afford to run the community and pay the common area expenses. Otherwise, you know, everybody's going to ask us for a haircut, and we just can't do it. So, you know, you got a $3,000 HOA lien that's standing in the way of getting a deal done, and again, everybody says, it's just $3,000. Certainly, somebody can come up with it. And the first mortgage lender's like, well, if there's any money to be obtained, it's coming to me. You know, because I'm the 800-pound gorilla, and I can foreclose and I can wipe everybody out. Now I can take it back, and now I have an REO property that I've got to sell with all the expenses related to it. But the reality is that they are the 800-pound gorilla. They call the shots. So, any other questions? Yes.
It's not really concerning a short sale, but I get agents all the time on the personal property or the bill of sale. Some agents say, well, you know, we don't have to put that. That doesn't have to be part of the contract or the offer. And I always try to disclose everything. Is there a right or wrong way to that, or does it? You know, like if somebody's buying a house and they're getting some of the furniture, and they put, you know, they put $1 in there. You know,
Well, you know, personal property. runs, you know, under a different set of rules. But in the short sale agreement, it says if there's any material fact that was not disclosed to the short sale lender, again, all those risks could come into play. So if they were to get some money and it wasn't disclosed, that's a material fact. I mean, that money could have gone to the short sale lender. If they do it for $1, wink, wink, you know it's not going to be $1. They're trying to give people money. I had a deal recently in very large community, high-end properties, where the agent called me on my cell phone, and she was very distraught because a prospective buyer said, look, this seller is really hurting, and I want to find a way to give them money, and the way I found out to do that is through a bill of sale. $75,000. You know, the furniture is probably not worth nearly that much, but you know, I want to give them a gift. And the selling agent said, you know, Steve, she goes, I don't really feel good about it. And I said, well, that needs to be disclosed. That's $75,000. It's a material fact. The risk is too high. What they do on their business, on their time, it's their business. But when they bring in agents that are held to a higher standard with ethical duties, attorneys like me on my deal, you know, I have to say, no, and I told her, absolutely not. Now that you're aware of it, you need to either not do the deal or restructure the deal to where it's done ethically. You know, where the $75,000 doesn't even come into play. Now, if they do that on their own, that's their business. But you're innocent. You had nothing to do with it. Okay. Any other questions, guys?
Steve, I've taken the course, and there is a federal law. The penalty is like $1 million and 30 years in prison, or both, for real estate agents who
Right.
are working these deals. So, you know, if you're a realtor, broker, be very careful on these flops.
Right, and it's not to say, I don't want you guys so paranoid where it you know, as Winston Churchill once said, that perfection breeds paralysis, you know, and, you know, paranoia will destroy you. No, what you want, he didn't say that. He just said the former. Winston Churchill didn't say the second one. But at the end of the day, you know, if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't smell right, just call me. Even if it's not my transaction, call another attorney, somebody that you trust to run it by. They can run it by the title company, and if there's enough eyes on it, and you're ever deposed and called on the carpet, you can say, I talked to Steve Golden. He talked to Stewart Title. I did my due diligence. You know, this is what they suggested, and I followed it. I'm willing to take that on the chin because I know the advice that I'm going to give you is more than likely going to keep you out of trouble. It's where you get into the, you know, let's not let them know. Let's just get the deal done. Let's work it out. You know, we're adults. It's our own business. It's the American way. That's my ideology. You buy low, you sell high. It's none of their business. It is their business. And you're sticking your head in the sand thinking it's not their business. And what's going to happen is you're going to be front page news at some point in time as a defendant in a lawsuit. And being in real estate, you guys know that, you know, our industry is kind of frowned upon right now. And the courts and law enforcement are looking for examples so that they can say to people, don't do this. Because if you do, you're going to end up in trouble. Look what happened to this guy. Just like that agent innocuously gets a phone call, you know, from a GBI agent. Who would have thought that there was somebody looking at these flop transactions? She didn't know. She did the right thing. Anyway.
Thank you so much, Steve.
You're welcome. Anything else I could share?
Questions? Any other questions? Did you have something else about the ethics? Or
no, I mean, that's it.
Okay.
I mean, if you want me to talk more, I've got plenty I could talk about. I could tell it inspirational. I can tap dance.
I was going to get everybody to introduce themselves.